call the City of Pico Rivera Council meeting of September 14th to order. Please. Roll call.
Council members, commissioners, Camacho,
Here.
Lara,
Yes.
Lutz,
Here.
Dr. Sanchez. Here. Mayor President Elias.
Here.
All present.
Okay. Hey, Councilmember Laura, could you please do the invocation for us?
If everyone could please stand. Please bow your head. Our Heavenly Father, we humbly come before you. As a group of people, we ask for your wisdom. We ask for the humility that you exhibited with your people of old. We pray for the people of Afghanistan as they go through change. We ask that those women, those young children, and those men find a way of peace and democracy that you have shown them. We pray for our Marines and our military personnel as they come home. We ask that you give them a caring hand to know that at the end of the day, they were faithful to us as individuals and to us as a nation. We pray for them. We pray for the citizens of Pico Rivera. In Jesus' name, amen.
Mayor Pro Tem, can you lead us in?
Please place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. City Manager, are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Mayor.
Let's see, I was advised that you were going to include another report from the veterans.
Yes, I don't know if they're here.
Let's see, they are going to be here about 6:37.
Okay. I think under city manager's reports, we can accommodate that.
Now, we have a memo in front of us from the city clerk, and my intention is not to read the complete item, but it was in response to some clarification on the process of placing items on the agenda. And if you take a look at it, there was a resolution made some time ago, okay, that said that we were, okay, it was on April 9th of 2019, that we were actually supposed to have an additional item on the agenda called Councilman Agenda Request. Mr. City Attorney, do we implement this at this meeting, or is it going to be the next one?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I do have the city clerk's memo, and I reviewed it. I view it as merely something that was provided for information. It is a resolution that was previously adopted by a city council, not necessarily this city council, but by a city council, and that if there are going to be changes to the manner in which council places or requests items on the agenda, we would want to put that on a future agenda for discussion. We do have tonight, however, the conversation regarding the council code of ethics, but that's something a little bit different than what I think the city clerk has provided for the city councel.
So it's something that we are going to be implementing in the next meeting.
Well, let me say this. It currently is in effect. These items that are in the resolution 6998 that's in effect because it was adopted by a city council. Again, not by, if there's any changes that the city council wishes to review and address, that should be on a future city council.
Since the memo basically is directing us in terms of just procedure within the council here, again, I'm not going to read it in public, but please get a chance to read it so we can get some clarity next council meeting. Okay, we have no presentations today?
None.
None. Okay, then we'll go into public comments. Today we have two communications from Jose Sanchez, okay, and also from Genevieve Martinez. And since they're basically the same comments, let me read the first paragraph of both their comments. I have read the proposed repair in CIP 50038, Item 7, September 12, 2021, council meeting agenda for Rosemead Boulevard Trench Breach Joint Concrete Slabs. This is not what was proposed in CIP 50041, a Caltrans standard repair for breached concrete slabs, which was assured it would be CIP 50038. The CIP 50038 proposed slurry, slack, backfill, a material used embedding water lines, is not a standard experimental repair for heavy vehicle load-bearing breached concrete slabs. It was previously considered and dropped and will not work. This is no Caltrans standard for it and should be rejected. We do not have the practice of responding to that, so we just have that on record. And that is also the comment that was made from Ms. Genevieve Martinez. Okay,
Mayor, a point of order, it was, just for clarification purposes, the individual writing those comments was Mr. Jose Sanchez. Our staff Genevieve is the one that provided the comments to us.
okay. So what,
It was just clarification.
all right, thank you. Clarified. Okay, agencies on tonight's agenda, City Council, Water Authority, consent calendar, 1 through 13. Council members, I'll go through the dais there. Is there anyone that you would like to pull on the consent? Councilman Laura?
Item number 7, please.
Number 7. Council? No? Mayor Pro Tem?
No.
Council?
None.
No? Okay. I would like to pull number 10. Councilman Laura, number 7.
Yeah, so this is in regards to the comment that was issued by this resident, Mr. Sanchez. Mr. Rodriguez, could you please comment on exactly what's taking place with this item and Mr. Sanchez's protest?
Councilman,
Yeah.
you don't want to pull it, you just want to ask a question.
Well, I wanted to pull it to just discuss it and ask a question under that guise.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the city council. Would like me to address that question, I assume. So I've had several conversations with Mr. Sanchez and regarding the trench on Rosemead. And during city manager comments later this evening, I will provide an update on the grinding we did on that trench. That was a very, and he and I agreed, it's a very temporary measure until the permanent repairs are affected. Those permanent repairs have been put into this sidewalk project that we are awarding tonight so that the permanent repairs will be done. This project will probably begin in October by the time the contracts are signed, and these permanent trench repairs will occur at that time. Now, Mr. Sanchez has communicated back and forth with me. I actually enjoy talking with Mr. Sanchez because he's an engineer, perhaps not a civil, but he has brought up issues about how we're repairing the
Sir,
trench.
can we
Oh,
not
yes, sir.
reference Mr. Sanchez's name?
Okay. The resident who has requested or objected to the way we're repairing the trench, we've had communications with him explaining the repairs, and we actually sent a very detailed, lengthy memo of how we're doing the repairs and why and what standards we're using. And if he has additional questions, I'm happy to, I've met with him out there, I've met with the resident, and I'd be happy to exchange additional email information with him. I'm confident that we're repairing the trenches correctly, and that when this project is done, it'll be a permanent solution that will last the lifetime of the roadway.
Councilman, you pulled number 7, that was the annual sidewalk improvement.
Yes.
Okay, that's part of it?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Are you satisfied?
I am satisfied, thank you. No further questions or inquiry from my part.
For clarification, we need to vote on the remaining items of the consent calendar. And then now that we finish this item, we need to vote on this item as well.
I cannot understand you.
We need to vote on the remaining items of the
Oh,
consent
yes,
calendar
okay,
calendar
yeah.
that were not pulled. And now that
All
we
right.
discussed this one, it's been okay, then we have to
Okay,
vote on that.
can we vote on the remaining? Okay, eliminating 7 and 10?
Well,
Move to approve items number 1 through 9 and 11, eliminating 10 until our discussion.
I second.
Okay. Now, part of this outline says that we do not have to do a roll call vote. Okay, so we're going to, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have 7 and 10. Mr. City Manager, Treasurer's Monthly Investment Transaction Report. Now, under the municipal code, okay, the finance manager is supposed to provide a monthly, not only expenditures, but revenue report to us. Is this what this is?
Yes, I'll turn it over to my interim ACM to answer that question.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. So on this item pertains to the investment policy that was adopted in June of this year, which indicates now that there's an additional provision to provide to City Council on a monthly basis the investment detail, all the purchases and sales of the individual investments. So for us, that means the LAIF, since that is a short-term investment, as well as the investments that Chandler Asset holds on our behalf.
Okay, so this is not the report that is required by the municipal code?
This is one of the reports that's required by the
Okay.
California Code and the municipal.
Are we going to begin having those types of reports showing revenue and expenses?
Sure, we can provide them on a monthly basis,
Thank you.
absolutely.
We vote on?
yeah, so
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we move items 7 and 10.
Okay.
If that's correct, Ms. Ayala?
So this is a motion to approve 7 and 10.
Yes, sir.
I
All
second.
in favor? Or second, please?
We have a second
We
from
have a second?
Councilmember
Okay.
Lutz.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
That concludes consent agenda, Mayor.
Okay. We go to our regular agenda. Minutes?
We have actually, Mayor, we moved item 14, I believe. Item number 14, which is the first reading of an ordinance adding section 8.16.015, vacant lots to chapter 8.16, nuisance abatement and administrative citations of Title 8, Health and Safety of the Pico Rivera Municipal Code. And I don't know if you have is there a presentation on this item?
There is a presentation if one is requested.
Mayor, I'd like to request the presentation.
You would like to request a presentation?
Yes.
Now, is this presentation going to require a PowerPoint or?
No, it's not. Just a verbal presentation by our
Okay.
director, Mike Garcia.
Mayor, City Council, item 14 before you is the first reading of an ordinance regarding a vacant lot ordinance. It would allow city staff to put together, for all intents and purposes, a listing of vacant lots within the city. We maintain this frequently, but what we do need to do is then contact property owners and give them this ordinance to let them know that we want a certain level of security, maintenance, and ongoing care given to the vacant lots. There are certain properties that over time retain a lot of weeds and they become what you would call an attractive nuisance, which would invite younger people to go and congregate and get into situations that might be dangerous. That's why we use that term attractive nuisance, if you see that in the ordinance or in the staff report. And what this would do is would allow us to keep track on the property owners and identify them if we need to provide citations to them to maintain and upgrade, if necessary, the maintenance there. This may have the requirement of them having to run water lines to maintain landscaping and within a 5-foot buffer from the public right-of-way. But outside of that, the main intent of this ordinance is to try to make sure that vacant lots are maintained in appearance and secure from individuals dumping or others getting onto the property.
We also believe that this will be an incentive to get the owners of these properties to sell their properties and put them into productive use because it becomes more of an expense for them by maintaining it.
Councilman?
No, I think this is great that we brought this forward because we do have this, issues with folks dumping and having accessibility to those lots. And I think this is definitely one of those items that we have to, once we get in the books, enforce because there's quite a few of these landlords that just leave them, unused, undeveloped, and a lot of nuisance comes with it. So I'm glad you bring this forward.
We have 2 major properties that are owned by foreign investors. How are we going to deal with those properties?
What we will utilize is the mail address for where the property tax bill gets sent from the LA County Assessor Records. On top of that, that's the best way to identify people legally is by using the property tax records. And so if we do not get compliance, we can not only we can begin the process of citing them, but we could even put liens on their property if they don't pay those citations and if they do not comply with this ordinance.
Now, we've had those properties there for quite a long time. How come we haven't done it before?
Which 2 are in particular, Mayor?
Okay, we have one property that's on, on Washington, not Washington, Slauson. That's next to the apartments, that empty lot right there.
Yes, there's one at the southeast corner of Bequet and Slauson, and over time, we've had multiple proposals that have come in to acquire that, to build residential or commercial. And so during that process, as we're working with those potential property owners and the current property owners, like right now, I noticed there on that property there is, and they're local, the property owner, there's a tire out there. Almost pulled over and just threw it in the back of my trunk yesterday. So this would just help us in putting some enforcement measures in place.
Do we not have another foreign owner on Serapis and Bermudez?
Yes, Dr. Lin. So Dr. Lin, we've been working with him. He is looking at a proposal for residential. Dr. Lin owns all 3 properties, the northwest corner of Serapis and Bermudez, southwest corner, and the southeast corner. There is a proposal there. He has been compliant. Many years ago, there was a 100-plus-year-old house there. And not only did we have vagrancy issues, but we had feral cat issues. And the smell from within that alleyway from those cats was getting very problematic. And so he's always been very cooperative. He tore down the building. We were going to go through a code enforcement process to demolish that building and then charge him back the cost. So we can go through normal code enforcement actions like this. This is just going to, for example, we're not allowing them to just put up regular chain link fencing. We want mini mesh or what you might call a wrought iron fence or a steel picket fence, something that would look a little more attractive, harder to scale, harder to see through. Mini mesh is just the smaller, it looks like a chain link fence but smaller. So this ordinance gets into a little more detail on the way we want these properties to be maintained. So,
Councilman Lutz, you had a question?
I want to thank staff for being productive and, more importantly, proactive, because what you're establishing here is a precedent for landowners and property owners to be responsible with their property. At the end of the day, we have a vision for this city, and all 5 of us, as the staff here in the city, we want to maintain our community safe and clean. And this measure here, I'm 100% in approval of it. Did one of our current council members bring this to staff as an agenda item? Was it?
I think it was under Camacho's committee.
Yes. Yes, council member, thank you very much for highlighting this item.
Mayor Pro Tem, question.
I have a question. What is the process for residents right now if they see this? For instance, I saw the tire as well, or cats or anything. So if a neighbor sees this or someone driving by, what should they do? What is recommended?
They can call our staff or even Public Works that identify the property, and we will send code enforcement out to observe it. Because it's private property, I jokingly said I was going to go grab the tire and pull it off, hoping nobody saw me, but it's private property, so we cannot get onto the property. We would need the property owner's approval to get on there. So code enforcement or even Public Works staff can take the information, and then my staff and code enforcement would investigate it and reach out to the property owner. We do have an app. It's called My PR app. We're going away from that. I believe it's still active. And we also have a new 3DI app. I'll let Javier tell you a little bit more about that because I don't recall I haven't downloaded it yet onto my new phone. But that's also working. So we have a few different ways if you don't want to call and speak to a live person.
Councilman Lara?
Thank you for the work, staff. And thank you, Councilmember Camacho, for being the brainchild behind this. I'm concerned about the fee, though. I'm concerned about the penalty. I think it's $100, and then could you explain the penalty? I think it was like $100, and it jumps up to $500. But at what point in time? I'm just concerned that the fee. If I own these lands, and if I didn't want to put out the money, I'd rather just pay the $100 every year, right? So I'm concerned that the fee isn't high enough to provoke the response that we want. Because at the end of the day, we want them to respond and to put a fence up, to actually tend to their land. I'm just concerned that $100 doesn't initiate that.
There's only so much we can do from a fine structure. We can definitely bring that back. We wanted to get this ordinance in place now, and then what we can do is look at what other cities have done to try to affect a greater response from property owners and see what would be an appropriate amount to put there, so.
I'd also like to add, council member, that it could be done on a continuous basis, so that $100 could be done, the next day it's not taken care of, so that could add up pretty quickly.
Councilman Camacho?
Yeah, approving this today, it would be great to come back and determine whether we need to amend that fee. I know that we can only legally charge so much per occurrence, but nonetheless, I do agree that we should do the max to make the point, get the point across.
Yeah, this ordinance is based on the current fine structure that we use in code enforcement for these type of normal violations. As the city manager was mentioning, it can increase a lot quicker, but it would probably be best to look at an improved fine structure and bring that back to council. And now that the maker of this request, Councilmember Camacho, we will absolutely do that, so.
We had another question from Lutz, Councilman?
Yes, Director Garcia, if we have an example of a landowner that doesn't comply and the weeds get out of hand and the debris becomes extraordinary, explain to the public and the council the abatement process, which are added penalties that attach themselves to the property.
At this point, we try to be very cooperative with our property owners. A great example is at the northeast corner of Paramount and Whittier. We noticed that the chain link fence had been broken. There were some weeds that were accumulating. And this is right next to a project that is in process of being rehabilitated, the former Whittier Manor apartment. So we reached out to that property owner, and they immediately, unfortunately, tore down those beautiful older eucalyptus trees and cleared the site. And but what we would do, if they had not complied, we would have started the fine. We would start the fine structure. It'd be $100. It quickly ramps up to $500. And depending on how aggressive we want to be, it gets expensive. The only thing is we want to make sure that we get compliance more than than get into a situation where somebody who's not generating economic returns on a property gets to a point where they can't maintain it. But the hope would be to encourage them to maintain it, secure it, and if they're not going to put it back into use, sell it.
Council, since it is a first reading, is a motion required to pass it?
Yes, Mayor, the motion is to introduce the ordinance, waive further reading of the ordinance, and to introduce at this time. That would be the motion.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Is this working for you?
It's introduced.
Okay.
This matter will come back to you at your next agenda for adoption, and then after that, 30 days thereafter, it will be approved as law in Pico Rivera.
Okay. Number 15, urgency interim ordinance establishing a moratorium on the establishment, relocation, and expansion of car wash using community commercial, general commercial, and commercial manufacturing zones. With the urgency of this, could you please provide us an explanation?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank Community Economic Development staff and also Council Member Camacho, I believe, on working on this. As you know, car washes do not generate sales taxes for the community. We have a very limited space that we can bring certain types of uses that the community would desire. This is an attempt to, again, address those concerns of valuing our vacant land. Also, to discourage this type of development from happening in our city. Mike, do we have a count of how many car washes we currently have?
Yeah, right now we have 3 automated car washes, and then we have 4 that are, or 3 that are self-operate with hoses. This would be making sure that there's sufficient distance from car washes with vacuums that tend to have noise issues for surrounding residential. And it would give us the time as staff to analyze this matter.
Yes, so it'll be coming back to council again after 45 days.
Questions? No questions? Councilman Lutz?
I have no questions. I actually commend staff to working on this project. Again, it goes along with the lines of the beautification and the standards of what our community is set to be in the future.
Mr. Mayor, this is an urgency interim ordinance. As the city manager indicated, this will be adopted, come back to the council in 45 days. However, because it is an urgency ordinance, we would need a motion and a second to adopt. And then I would suggest a roll call because it requires a 4/5 vote.
Okay. Suggestion that we have a roll call and motion?
Motion as recommended.
Second.
We have a second? Okay, roll call?
Council members, Commissioners Camacho,
Yes.
Lara,
Yes.
Lutz,
Yes.
Dr. Sanchez,
Yes.
Mayor President Elias.
Okay, number 16, review and approval of donation and gift policy. Any questions regarding them? Councilman Lutz?
I have comments, plenty of comments. The donation policy, first I would like the city manager to give us an overview on it, and then I will comment.
Yes, Mayor, City Council, at this time, our interim ACM has prepared a PowerPoint and she'll run through it.
Oh, wait, but before you start here, Council, have you viewed the PowerPoint?
I have it before me, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. Tonight, we're presenting in front of you today a donation and gift acceptance policy, and this was, just really at the request of council because there were outside parties wishing to donate monetarily or otherwise to the city for infrastructure and other projects. So what the purpose of the policy is to establish a formal process, an administrative process for the acceptance and documentation of the donations and or gifts made to the city. And it applies to the donations being given to the city as an organization. So that distinguishes the organization from individual parties. Now, the individual parties are officers, officials, employees, volunteers. Those still fall under the guise of the guidance, the guidelines of the California FPPC. So in terms of the limits set forward and the documentation that needs to be provided by city officials, officers, employees, and volunteers, those would still need to be documented and submitted to the Office of Record, which would be the city clerk's office. This policy is more for donations that are being given to the city for special projects, for designated purposes, for rec parks programming, et cetera. So again, it distinguishes the city from individuals, and that's the one of the underlying guidelines that's set forward in this policy. The policy also does reference that the FPPC, Code of Conduct, and Conflict of Interest Code trump anything that that is included in this policy. So it references each of those three handbooks or guidelines, and the enforceability of those three guidelines still stands, despite the fact that we have a formal donation policy in place. And so we have a few more slides. So this is just a background as to the Fair Political Practices Commission, or FPPC, which gives you the guidelines. This is something that the city clerk's office issues every year for each member of the certain members of the organization, including all elected officials, to fill out and state contributions over specific dollar amounts. So we've laid out what those dollar amounts are on this slide. Next slide, please. Conflict of Interest Code goes on to further reference the FPPC. And next slide, please. And then the Code of Ethics and Conduct does the same thing. So again, Code of Ethics and Conduct, Conflict of Interest Code, FPPC, set forward the guidelines for individual parties. The donations policy more sets internal parameters as to what we as an administrative body need to do when we're approached with a donation for citywide purposes. So that concludes my presentation. If there are any other questions City Council might have.
Any questions?
I have comments.
You have a problem?
I don't have any problems personally, but I do have a couple of concerns about this donation policy. In essence, I read the details of this donation policy. And politics is an interesting thing, because what this does is allows a roadmap for vendors and contractors to submit a donation to specific departments within our city. Now, that is a method of influencing our administrative staff, whether we like it or not. The possibility will now exist. The roadmap will be set in place. I do not want, as a council member, to encourage vendors or contractors to identify a specific roadmap so they can make donations of $5,000 or $10,000 to a specific department. If they have an item that's on the table that is of concern or that is under review, a simple donation may or may not influence staff members of a particular city. Now, with the city of Pico Rivera adopting this roadmap, this will encourage unscrupulous contractors and vendors to follow these guidelines and inadvertently influence the city of Pico Rivera. I am opposed to this. I ran for city council so that we would follow a moral code. And just because other cities have this item that has been approved does not mean we need to follow their path. Again, I'm opposed to this. It allows for contractors and vendors to bypass city council members who may or may not be ones to consider donations and be bypassed and go directly to city staff. So to give you an idea, A vendor or a contractor or a corporation can donate $10,000 or less, and city staff can approve the item without the consent of council, and then alert council that the donation was received. Now, that opens up so many possibilities of influence. And I stand before you here, I sit before you, letting you know I do not want our staff to be influenced other than to make positive decisions for our community and our residents. If there's a donation of $10,000 or more, then that donation is to be approved by the council. But could you imagine? Now these contractors or vendors can make donations of $5,000 at one point, then another $5,000. And eventually the sum total is $10,000, $15,000 or $20,000 over a year's period. And the following year, then they have an item that's under review with city staff. I don't want that to be a possibility in our community. I want our city to stay clean. And so I'm opposed to this donation and gift acceptance policy. If there is a legitimate company that wants to make a donation, then let it be done on a case-by-case basis. But I do not want to advertise that Pico Rivera is for sale. At the end of the day, that's what this comes down to. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, I would like to say I disagree with that comment. I requested this, this process, so in this process would allow further transparency. This has been discussed many, many years ago. Since I was served on the Parks and Recreation Commission, I recall an agency wanting to donate shoes or something to a local to our basketball league. However, we did not have a mechanism to accept these donations. So we, in turn, the city, have to turn them away and not get shoes or clothing or something that's being donated to our participants. So I felt that this policy will allow us to review on a case-by-case basis, correct? They will have a written form.
Yes.
The individual that is submitting the donation, either in kind or dollar form, is going to say the purpose of what it's for. And we, the council, have the right to deny and approve at the will, as well as having the checks and balances of the finance director in the department, correct?
Yes, yes.
So it is part to have a transparent process to accept in-kind and cash donations.
And if I may add something, Councilmember and Mayor Pro Tem, the $10,000 is a recommended guideline. We looked at GFOA best practices. We looked at other cities, at least 10 other cities. We looked at our auditors for guidance as to how to set these parameters and these levels. The 10,000 is a recommendation. We can go higher or lower if council wishes to entertain a different dollar amount and structure. We can bring everything to council before approval or set a lower threshold if that is the will of this body.
What are some of the other cities that have this type of gift acceptance policy?
We looked at the city of Pasadena, Glendora, I believe Santa Monica, Long Beach. There are several cities that we looked at in the state of California. We stuck to the state of California as, that's what we like to just look to in setting policy. But we definitely looked to our auditors to make sure that this was a transparent process.
And how was this $10,000 amount set? That was the kind of the average of the...
Yeah, that was the average that we looked at. Some were even higher depending on the size of the city.
Thank you.
Councilman Lara?
Great, thank you for the presentation. I just wish it would have went into detail on exactly the policy itself instead of just an overview and talking about the difference between FPPC and this donation process, such as what Councilmember Lutz brought out about the city manager being able to take donations of $10,000 or less, or it being earmarked for a particular department. I too think that is not a transparent process for me. I think if there was going to be a donation policy, everything should come to council, and it should just be very transparent. So I agree with Councilmember Lutz on many of his comments.
Councilman?
Yeah, no, I'm glad we're having this conversation, something that we've discussed for years regarding how to accept the support of, businesses in the area and even philanthropists. There's been folks that have done well here in the city and have contributed one way or another. But I definitely respect and appreciate the comments by Councilmember Lutz regarding making sure that we don't create these unintended consequences of somebody's goodwill turning into some level of influence in one particular party or another, whether it be staff or council. So I think we need to make sure that we address that. I know that in particular, Parks and Recs, when we were doing quite a few events in the past, there were a lot of businesses that were giving a lot of in-kind donations and contributions and so forth to make our events that much bigger and better and add to the, so there's value in this as far as having a process. I think that if we can clean it up by adding, once again, short of being accepted by staff, but rather the item comes before the council, so we have an opportunity to discuss and vet and determine whether there's something pending by a particular entity that's coming before us, but it gives us an opportunity for the community to see. I think I'm for that as well, to make sure that we clean it up and allow us to make sure that that it is transparent and it is accountable and it is meant to meet its objective by folks who want to support the city in its efforts. Many programs out there, so.
I have a problem with this because what the presentation shows is if you're an elected official, if you're in the city council, okay, you're covered by, almost everything, but you're still talking about having, that $9,999 staff situation there. So, and I have not seen the staff's code of ethics or conflicts of interest or anything else like that. So that would be my concern, is that you would have contributions of $9,999 coming in, okay, without the safeguards that are provided with, or for those over $10,000. So that's my concern.
Well, could we just amend this and say that all contributions must come before council for approval?
If I may address those issues and those concerns, let me try to distinguish for the council, if I may. There are certain rules and regulations for individuals, for the council, for city staff, for a city manager, for myself, a city attorney, and any city official, appointed city official, who is required to file a 700 form. So those are certain, and I'll cover what those rules are in a moment. This attempts to identify a gift or donation policy for the city as an entity, not for any individual to take home and use for their own individual purposes. This is a gift and donation policy for gifts that are offered to the city. Now, I recognize the commentary that it could influence staff at certain levels. It shouldn't, but it could. And maybe the concern is the dollar amount. While it may be the recognition that other cities do allow for $10,000 gifts to the city as an entity to be accepted by the city manager, if the council doesn't feel comfortable with that level for the city manager, you always have the authority to adjust that. Secondly, is anything, at least the policy that's being presented, is that if the city receives a offer of a gift or donation of $10,000 or more, it must come to the city council for approval. Now, let me go back to the gifts to any individuals. As the city council may recall during the AB 1234 presentation, the state law, the FPPC regulations, and state government code limits the amount of gift that any individual council member or any individual staff member may personally receive. That limit currently in this year is $520. And any gift of $50 or more in any 12-month period must be reported on your 700 forms. So that if there's a $50 gift or more, it should be notated on your 700 forms, and you cannot receive gifts that exceed $520 in any calendar year. That's different than what's intended by this policy. However, it's here offered for the council's review and consideration. We stand ready to adjust and adapt and modify the city's gift and donation policy. But I should also note, whatever you do adopt for the city cannot and will not adjust or modify what each of you as council members or any of us as city staff can accept as gifts. Those are governed and regulated by the FPPC regulations and the state law.
Council, you just convinced me that we need to have this a little bit more thought into it, because everything that you've said makes sense to me.
So having said that, I'd like to table this item.
Do we have a second? I second.
Just for clarification, you want to, are we tabling it, or continuing this item
Continue to next
for clarification?
Under Robert's Rules of Order, tabling means that you just set it aside until somebody brings it off the table. Continuing the matter to a specific date means you're deferring this matter to a date in the future, so.
No, I intended to table the item.
Table?
Yeah.
So your motion was to table it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I second it.
I'd like a second motion move to continue this item to another meeting allow staff a couple of weeks to amend and review.
Okay, there's a second on it. Can we have a vote?
Well, it does the same thing.
Well, there could be a substitute motion, correct, but I mean, in essence.
I mean,
Basically, I don't want to table it
Are
and
you
leave
calling a
it.
question, or what?
No, I have a separate motion and
What
one.
I would understand the Mayor Pro Tem's motion is a substitute motion to continue the matter.
Okay, but there's a motion already that was seconded on
But
it.
under parliamentary procedure, Mr. Mayor, a substitute motion can be made. If it doesn't receive a second, then it dies. Then we go back to the original motion. So there's a motion by the Mayor Pro Tem as a substitute motion to continue this matter to, do you have a date specific, Mayor Pro Tem?
To the first October meeting, to allow staff time to amend and review.
That would be the 12th. The motion is, instead of tabling this matter, which means to push it off indefinitely, this
Oh,
is,
let's go to council.
Council, I just want to clarify. So what you're stating to us and the public is that the first motion is to be disregarded.
there's, under Robert's Rules of Order, a person can make a motion. It is seconded. Before that vote is taken, there is actually, under proper parliamentary procedure, then there is discussion on the original motion. We've already had the discussion. There's a substitute motion to the original motion.
point of order.
To Councilmember Lara's motion. If that motion is seconded, that becomes the primary motion. You vote on that motion.
Okay.
If that passes, then that motion, then the first motion, you do not need to take action on. Excuse me. So that you have two motions right now. One which has been seconded, which is the motion to table. And table means to set it off the council's agenda indefinitely. It has to actually be brought up in the future by a council member to bring it back onto the table. This motion by the Mayor Pro Tem is to request, instead of tabling it, to continue the matter till the first meeting in October. And at this point, there is no second to that motion.
So I'd like to make a motion that we call for the question of the first motion.
Then that requires a because then you're cutting debate, and that will require 4/5 vote.
So I want to second the substitute motion, which I understand supersedes the first motion.
Now, if the substitute motion is voted on, then you're voting on whether or not you wish to bring it back in October the 12th. If that motion fails, you go back to the original motion,
And
table,
Well,
and then you vote on the original motion.
Would you accept a deadline on?
Well, that's the thing. Okay. My intention behind my motion is to allow staff and city council members
Okay.
to weigh in and work on this.
And she's talking about October.
Yeah, Councilmember Dr. Sanchez wants a deadline. I don't want a deadline because I don't know how long it's going to take for us staff and whatnot. I'd like for this to come back. I just don't want a deadline. So therefore, I made the motion to table the item, and we can bring the item back once it's ready.
And that doesn't, and Councilmember Lara's motion does not mean this item dies forever. It just means it needs to have, at a future council meeting, someone says, oh, by the way, let's bring back the donation and gift policy.
And that can happen at any given time, but that's what I'm saying, I think we're getting into a little minutia of semantics here, but more importantly is, giving staff enough time to bring it back. The timeline was set by Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay,
Councilmember, what would be an acceptable time to come back? If assuming we give a time, a month, 2 months?
I mean, I don't know, maybe a month or 2 months. I don't know.
And there is a time-sensitive matter. We have had some initial contact with vendors that want to donate regarding our swimming pool
the
and
city's
other.
existing-
would we ask staff for a deadline?
Yeah, I mean, we can bring it back at October 12th.
What?
We could bring it back whenever council wants to hear it. If it's October 12th, we can bring it back, because what I heard was that the modifications revolve primarily around the amounts, so we can adjust that and bring it back to council.
What I
With
might
October
suggest,
12th?
what I might suggest, Mayor, is for staff to bring back a chart of other cities and what their values are of acceptable gifts.
And not only was it an acceptable gift, but also for it to come before the council based on this certain amounts, so just give.
I mean, without a policy, if somebody comes in and offers a gift to the city, not to any individual
We can't
official,
accept it.
but to the city,
But it goes beyond just the price here. We need to talk about, the code of ethics for staff, and we need to talk about the, conflict of interest for staff also.
but
Yes.
Mayor, I wanna be succinct and clear about why I'm opposed to this. I just find it very coincidental that we're talking about a gift acceptance policy of in the thousands to specific departments or a city in general during the time when our rezoning has occurred for commercial property, and the city council is gonna be doing a study session on cannabis. Let that sink in.
We have the discretion to approve or deny any gift. So if a cannabis business were to try to give a $10,000 donation, we could request that come to the council. If we feel that it's inappropriate, we deny it.
A cannabis corporation or company could do increments of 3,000 over a year period of time.
All right.
Incrementally, they could be more than 10,000. But let's
Councilman,
discuss that later.
Okay, we can argue this most of the evening here. Now, we have a motion to table it. It was second, okay? Can we take a vote on it?
this is to table.
To table.
Table it.
How did that happen?
With all due respect, I'm not running the meeting,
Okay, so, but that's not correct. We can't do that.
October 12th, but the mayor does not want to recognize that motion.
Well, that's not acceptable. We have to follow the rules, and the rules is that.
Wait a minute, now, I'm conducting this meeting, not you.
Point of clarification, city council, city attorney.
We have a motion and we have a second. Let's have a vote.
It's
We have two
not,
motions.
it's not correct.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Well, we have a motion and we have a second.
Then
Let's vote.
Then let's vote.
But it's not correct.
Councilmember Camacho?
Can I point of clarification to our city clerk, at least get a second opinion on the process of a substitute motion? The city council, the city attorney just advises that proper decorum, proper rules of Robert's Rules of Order allows for when somebody makes a substitute motion, it supersedes the first motion. Whether the second motion passes or not, and we revert ourselves back into the first motion, then that's the process. We can't make it up as we go along here, Mayor. There's a book, remember that book that they gave us? It's all in there. And this is the proper procedure. You can't just go back and change it as you wish. So my suggestion is that we follow proper procedure.
We have a second, okay, we have a vote. Let's go to roll call.
Let's make sure everyone's clear on what they're voting on, because we have, Madam Assistant City Clerk, Deputy, what is the motion that you have on the floor?
At this point, it is to table the item.
Why don't you put on your button?
At this point is to table the item.
To table the item. Okay, do we have a vote?
Let's take roll.
Roll call vote.
Councilmember Camacho?
And just for the record, to our city attorney, again, this is not proper procedure following Robert's Rules of Order, correct?
That has been my opinion.
Thank you. So I've never abstained from a vote, but this is,
Okay.
I have to, because this is silly.
Laura?
I'm sorry, what are we voting on? To table?
To table.
Yes.
Lutz?
Yes.
Dr. Sanchez?
I vote no, and I would like to point out that the mayor has denied my motion, my alternative motion, and I think that this is incorrect, even going against our city attorney's advice, that there should have been a vote for my motion first, and then if that motion failed, then we move on to the motion to table. So I would like to add that to the minutes as well, that this is improper order of Robert's rules.
Mayor Elias?
Yes.
This matter is now tabled.
The next item are minutes. City Manager, what does this item have to?
This is, Mr. Point, if I may, this is my item that I brought up, that I brought back. If I may comment on this?
Let's hear from the city.
Okay.
Why did
Fair
you put it on the agenda?
Yeah, this was to come back for a vote. I don't think it's been agendized for a discussion item, and I've communicated that with the city attorney. I know there was a presentation submitted directly to our media team to play, but again, it hasn't been run by me, nor has it been approved. Also, ran it by city attorney, it hasn't been agendized.
No, okay. One, I don't need to play the PowerPoints. I have 3 PowerPoints just to put my items and make them succinct. Secondly, council, when an item is agendized like this, is a discussion inherent with the vote?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this comes before you and it's been placed back on the agenda. As you recall, last meeting, or last time that the council addressed this issue, it was requested to have a discussion item and have a full presentation. It appears before you for consideration of approval of the minutes as presented in memorandum from my office and also supported by the city clerk's office, is that the commentary to the council was that the request to have more detailed minutes and comments from council members and members of the public, the city clerk's office, and I would support that. That's really not the purpose of minutes. I would suggest, if the council wants to have a much more healthy dialogue about the minutes, especially of that meeting, then we bring it back to your next meeting with that specifically agendized.
Well, with all due respect, council, I'm going to ask my question again, because the city manager just made a claim. He said that this item was not put for discussion, therefore, I can't use my PowerPoints. All right, that's his claim. My counterpoint is that when an item is agendized like this for a vote, a discussion is inherent with that vote. Is that correct, Mr. Counselor?
If it's on the agenda, it's up for the council's discussion.
So therefore.
PowerPoints are usually,
Thank you. So therefore, there's a discussion that goes along with the vote. Come on, this is just elementary, right? But the city manager just said that we can't have a discussion on a vote.
I think
That's what he just said. I was just here. Look,
You're already discussing it, so discuss what you need to discuss. Can we move on, please?
I just want to make this very simple. I would like to amend the minutes of July 13th to state Columbia Capital Columbia Capital Management Representative, Mr. Williams, did not score Cabrera Capital #1 on his scoring matrix for the pension obligation bonds. Can I get a second and a vote? That's what I just want to add to the minutes. That's it.
I'll second.
I have a couple questions on that, just on the issues of the minutes. I know that our city clerk is responsible for taking minutes and using the guidelines within that city clerk's purview to put these minutes. What is your opinion on that? And as it relates to individual council members asking to edit the minutes specifically?
And I read the report also, okay, where, you know, there's a specific statement in terms of what should be included and what should not, okay? I guess the point that I want to do is that if this is required discussion in terms of clarification, let's continue that discussion so we do get clarification on it.
So to my question, to our city clerk, your response to?
Mayor, City Council, I would agree. The conversation has been held between the city clerk, city legal counsel, and city manager. So I have not been privy to that discussion, so I would not feel comfortable answering on her behalf. So I would recommend that she be here.
Sure, you know,
And again, I'm only asking because I think the issue at hand is not necessarily whether the ask of what is being asked to include it verbatim is the issue, but rather the procedure of utilizing minutes as a means for any one of us to edit the minutes to imply, say, or dictate what we specifically want those minutes to have. That's never happened since I've been in office here, that anybody has tried to. So I want to make sure we don't set a precedence, is what I'm.
Councilman, you use the term edit. I don't think that that's appropriate in terms of the conversation that was said.
Well, I can use the words that I choose to use, but
Mayor.
what I'm saying is that my concern is saying a precedence that any one individual member up here can provide an item that all of a sudden becomes part of those minutes, is my concern.
I don't think it's fair that we have the conversation without the city clerk. You agree?
well,
Can we table it till,
we can just bring it back to the next agenda item. But I'd like to just address some of those points because I think they're partially valid. One, no one individual is doing this. This would be a collective vote by the council. So therefore, this would be a council vote. Secondly, I did have discussion with the city clerk. She reviewed the tape and she said that what I'm asking for was actually said. But she said if you wanted to amend the minutes, council would have to do it. So I'm not setting a precedent. What I'm doing is I'm just using parliamentary procedure to amend the minutes. I'm not doing anything new, and it's not one individual. It would be a council vote, and I don't know how the council is going to vote. But this is the way I saw it. This is the way we all saw it. I would just like to vote on this and move on.
your position is based on a conversation with the city clerk. The city clerk is not here. So I would like us
Sure.
to have this conversation when the city clerk is here.
Without a doubt. So why don't I, so therefore my motion is to bring this back to the next city council meeting.
That would be a motion to continue this item. I want to make sure the council, and I'm using specific words, to table an item is one thing. To continue an item is to keep it alive and just hold it over to your next meeting. So the appropriate motion, I would suggest, is to continue this matter to your meeting of September 28.
I second.
Yes.
Second.
Thank you, second. Thank you.
A vote?
This is
Oh,
continued,
we need to
continue
roll
this
call?
item number 17 to September 28, 2021.
Councilmembers Camacho,
Yes.
Lara,
Yes.
Lutz,
Yes.
Dr. Sanchez,
No.
Mayor Elias.
Yes.
This matter will return for the council agenda on September 28th.
Item number 18, discussion item, review and provide direction regarding possible changes to city's code of ethics. City manager, do you want to read your recommendations?
Yeah, so I'm going to turn it over to the city attorney.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. As requested from the City Council, was to bring back for your review and consideration the existing Code of Ethics and Conduct Policy, which was adopted pursuant to Resolution 7098. And at that time, the City Council approved a rather comprehensive policy. And I should note, because there's some concern or some earlier discussion about who the Code of Ethics applies to, And let me highlight, if I may, to this end, and I'm quoting exactly from the resolution, the Pico Rivera City Council has adopted this code of ethics and conduct for elected officials and members of appointed boards, commissions, and committees, and city staff members to assure public confidence in the integrity of local government and to ensure its effective and fair operation. And with that having been said, and in the report that was prepared with my office in conjunction with the city manager's office, there are 21 different substantive provisions of this code of ethics. Again, it's very comprehensive. I work with many cities. It's probably at the forefront. Pico Rivera is at the forefront of your policy, and that's a good thing. In order to try to carve up the elephant, if you will, of the policy, what tonight we are asking from the city council is, if you wish, number one, initially, to review and evaluate your current code of ethics, and then two, if you do, if the city council wishes to do it this evening, is to highlight those areas that you feel need to be revisited by the city council. I see before me this evening a memorandum from the mayor, who has presented to the city clerk, I believe it's on all the council's dais, is the mayor's proposed additions to the current city code of ethics. And that's appreciated, Mayor, because it does give us at least a roadmap from where you're thinking we should be evaluating this current code of ethics. Without jumping into too much detail or substance tonight, we do wish to present it to you, and I guess initially seek from the city council if you wish to revisit the existing code of ethics, and if so, then that's the first step. And then if that's approved, then however the council's direction is to try to undertake this endeavor, then we'd be looking forward to council direction. If you wanted to refer to one of the many subcommittees, that could be done, or however the council wishes to do it.
Counselor, one of the discussion points that we've had about the code of ethics is, you're right, our code of ethics is a little bit more specific and detailed than other cities. But what I thought we had missing was the implementation and enforcement of it. And again, we want to articulate the legal enforcement procedures that will be followed by the city of Pico Rivera Council as it carries out its duties to enforce the codes of ethics and standards. A major goal is the enforcement procedures to ensure objectivity and fundamental fairness. So the point that I wanted to make is that we need your office to review this to see that it is tighter than new shoes, in terms of it. And the other element is for us to consider, okay, in the hearings, that we actually secure an outside individual, a mediator, an arbitrator, or someone outside that would be able to listen to the case and have that objectivity and that fairness. Now, I understand that there's going to have to be some discussions and votes on this. Which do you think is the best way to handle this, Council?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the enforcement process of the Code of Ethics is always a unique one. It's usually the council themselves who police and enforce possible violations of the Code of Ethics against their colleagues. If there's a desire to have a mediator or an arbitrator review and evaluate allegations of Code of Ethics violations, that adds a different layer onto to this process. I have not seen that specifically in other communities. I've represented myself individually 13 different cities in my career. And normally the council wants to have that control. Well, granted, sometimes that does get political in and of itself. A mediator or a arbitrator cannot impose any final action against a council member. No one can remove a council member from office except for the electorate. Tonight, we're having that kind of situation occur with the consideration of the recall of the governor. The voters are the only ones that get to make that final decision. Censure, as outlined in the mayor's proposal, that has varying degrees of impact. It sometimes is no more than a slap on the wrist or a public slap on the wrist. But in terms of council actions of removing a council member who's in violation of certain code of ethics from committee assignments or from outside organization assignments, I've seen that happen in the past. Reprimand, again, we cannot go into closed session to discuss specific activity or conduct from council members as it relates to certain activities. If that may lead to litigation, then that's a different story. But public reprimand of a council member generally rests with this body. Obviously, staff does not want, nor should we be the ones to reprimand or censure a member of the city council.
And the city staff, in addition, are held accountable to this same code of ethics, correct?
Correct.
Council, I was here previous to, the development of the code of ethics. That's, that was one of my introductions in here, but what I saw a serious problem. A serious problem in that we only had two devices to be able to deal with council people, okay, that needed to be looked at. That's a recall and reelection. This code of ethics is going to provide us another tool in that toolbox to be able to deal with it, because again, recalls are very expensive and very tedious, and again, elections are every 4 years. So we need to have something like this, and we need to have a strong document, because again, I agree with Councilman Lutz, is that we need to be able to announce that Pico Rivera, okay, is open for business, but it's going to be fair and honest business.
No, and I would concur that it's good that we have an opportunity to revisit something we put together. As a matter of fact, I was part of drafting this as well and signed it as mayor last year, so I'm very familiar. And also making sure that we look at what's missing and what can be amended and so forth, because ultimately this is a measuring stick, no doubt, for everyone. And I think some of the things that I would like for us to discuss and look at is elected official conduct with staff, both public and private, as a way to conduct themselves with staff. In addition to that, elected official conduct on social media as it relates to, posing a negative content on the city and implying things that need to be relooked at. So those are items that I think we need to address and look at and make sure that as we make this code of ethics better and improved, that we continue to add value to it. So I would definitely like to continue having this. Give me an opportunity for us to provide some of my commentary and suggestions as to how we make this document more improved.
Council, if you know what we're looking for, do you have a suggestion on how we could accomplish it?
Yes, well, Mayor, members of the City Council, I would suggest two approaches. One is our office can go back and review other communities' code of ethics to evaluate what, I think it was pointed out that there is really minimal discussion of enforcement or repercussions of violations. We can take a look at that as number one. And then secondly, if any council member wishes to communicate to me directly as opposed to all council members, so we don't have a Brown Act violation, to send me your thoughts. And we will take a look at that, and then if you will give us 30 days in which to try to bring back some ideas for the council to chew on, I think that would be a productive approach.
Councilman Lara, do you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you for this discussion. Thank you for bringing this back. I think this is very healthy for a city to take a look at this and supplement things or maybe take things away. There's two items I'd like to consider is the revolving door, whereby if former elected official of this city or former employee of this city, I'd like to set that standard. I know I talked about 10 years, but I'd like to set that standard for 5 years. And keep in mind, I read your memo, and it was good. It was well put, but I'd like to stretch that envelope in favor of integrity. Secondly, I'd like to have a discussion on nepotism. I think that's important to have something in place. At the city, I believe there isn't anything in place regarding that, nepotism. And also a limit on campaign contributions. So just those three items from my perspective. And I'm tentative about going towards social media and stuff like that, because then there's a fine line between First Amendment rights, right? Like, if I wanted to criticize the city all day long, or staff, or what have you, that's my First Amendment right. How untasteful that may be to other city council members or staff or what have you, each council member has that First Amendment right to express themselves. And I may disagree with your take, but at the same time, that's why we have the freedom of speech. So I just would be careful on treading on that. But those are my three items.
And Mayor, if I may add just on the social media, because I brought it up, I think I agree on the First Amendment right. I think, if anything, it's just making sure that we have that conversation, a dialogue as to what is, factual and what is not. I mean, there's a difference between expressing your opinion on facts that you believe are correct and, creating half-truths. So that's something, a discussion I think we should have. I think, don't you think that's fair? But in addition to that, one thing I wanted to add, and maybe something that we should, something I've been looking at and reviewing as well, is that, there's a lot of conversation, we had it today. It's standard. I mean, I've heard this many times, of implying about contractors, vendors, people that work in the city, and whether, a recommendation that was provided was correct or not, and or whether a particular situation might be created that might allow for wrong play, if you will. But I think, why don't we then expand this and put together a code of ethics conduct for people that do business with us and vendors? I mean, if we're truly in that realm of transparency and accountability and making sure that no one is doing anything that they shouldn't, then we should look at creating a code of ethics for contractors, vendors, and so forth. So something for us, I want to strongly suggest that we, again, what are we doing? Improving the city's function and operations, and making sure that everyone's accountable and transparency, both the council and staff. I think that's something we should consider as well as we add that. So I want to add that to that as well, for us to look into creating a code of conduct for people that do business with the city of Pico Rivera.
Pro Tem?
Yeah, I want to add my comment in that this is a great tool for us to have transparency, and also just to make sure we're all on the same page in terms of we're trying to do the best to adhere to a code of ethics and use our power for good versus evil. But similarly to this donation and gift acceptance policy, it could also be used as a tool to target either staff or council. So it could be used as a tool to try to stifle or bring dishonor, so to speak, to a person on council. If that person, and maybe the items are not true, there is that issue of who's to say that, let's say a colleague or somebody, staff, brings a complaint on this code of ethics. Who's to determine that that's true or false? And it could be an attack, a personal attack in nature. And this tool could be used to therefore hurt somebody. So kind of like our donation and gift acceptance, our intention is to receive positive gifts to give to our children or residents, but it could be used. How do we prevent it from being used as a tool for evil versus a tool for good? And so I think that we need to put in a safeguard somehow, and maybe that is the mediator or arbitrator thing, to kind of fact check and make sure that this information doesn't get out or be used as a tool to belittle or disparage any staff or any council member.
Councilman Lutz?
I value and respect all the suggestions that all the council members have added, and I appreciate every one of you. And I look forward to the healthy discussion, and I would say that we carry this over to a following date.
So Mayor, with the council's consensus, I would suggest at least 30 days, which would take us to the end, which would take us to October the 12th. For some reason, I think I may be out of town that day. Let me just check my calendar, Mayor. My apologies. Yes, if possible, to the meeting of October 26th.
Does it require a motion?
If there's no objection to that, Mayor, then that will be the order of the chair.
Fine?
Yep. Come back to you on October 26th.
Yeah.
Thank you.
City manager staff reports.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. On April 27th, the City of Pico Rivera passed a proclamation to declare a climate emergency in support of Earth Day. As part of the proclamation, the city commits to provide climate and environmental literacy training for city staff, reduce carbon emissions in half by 2035 and reaching net zero emissions by 2050, and integrating climate and environmental justice into all community decision-making. To celebrate this commitment, the Office of Sustainability and Media team have put together a short video highlighting how the city celebrates Earth Day, not one day, but all year long.
Can you help me pick up trash around the world? The whole entire earth will be fine and clean. Instead of polluting with the car, I like to ride my bike. Just recycle. It's that simple.
I am Mayor Raul Elias for the City of Pico Rivera. We know that Earth Day falls on April 22nd each year, but we are proud to celebrate Earth Day every day. We invite you to participate with our residents, our businesses, and other communities across the globe as we take action to restore our Earth all year long. The City of Pico Rivera recognizes the need to protect this Earth and address issues that threaten the future of our planet with solutions such as reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, promoting action to mitigate climate change, and integrating climate and environmental justice into the decision-making process. We promote climate literacy through detailed project updates, inform the community via our profile newsletter, our social media platforms, and educational tools. Our partnership with Energy Upgrade California and many other organizations will help us along the journey that earthday.org has provided us. Residents can take 3 simple actions today. Action number 1, join the conversation and events hosted through earthday.org. Number 2, reduce, reuse, recycle, and compost your waste, but also keep our public spaces clean to reduce pollution. Number 3, connect with the Global Earth Challenge, hosted by earthday.org, to provide your data on air and water quality, climate change, food sustainability, and more. And you will help scientific research drive meaningful change. Pico Rivera has a goal to integrate climate and environmental justice into all community decision-making through our commitment to sustainability and constant progress towards exceeding statewide energy and environmental goals. On behalf of the City of Pico Rivera, we wish you Happy Earth Day all year long. Remember, their future depends on us.
Yay!
Great. At this time, I'd also like to turn it over to Terry Rodriguez to do a couple updates, project updates that we have in our city. Terry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. At the last council meeting, Public Works Department received requests for 2 updates to come back at this council meeting, and I have a video on each one. The first video is a drone video at our intersection of Rosemead and Beverly Boulevard, and I wanted to provide an update on the construction at that intersection. Gabriel, if you could start that video. And I'm going to ask Gabriel to stop the video several times. So if you could stop right here, Gabriel. This angle we're looking at, we are at the north end of the project. This is Rosemead Boulevard we're looking at. We're looking southerly. And as you can see, the 4 corners of the intersection have been fairly completed with concrete at the 4 corners of the intersection. The dirt area where you see on Rosemead is largely poured now with new concrete. We're waiting for it to cure. And we're going to come back and do the final asphalt work on Rosemead in about 2 weeks. Go ahead, and Gabriel, and continue this drone video. It's only about 30 seconds total. Again, that shows Rosemead looking to the south. And then starting, go ahead and freeze that, Gabriel. That is Beverly to the east, actually. And again, you can see the corners are done. We still need to reconstruct the median in Beverly and move that to the south a bit, and then finish the paving on Beverly. And keep going, Gabriel. And then get to the west now on Beverly. You can see we've been able to open, go ahead and stop there, Gabriel, thank you. We've been able to open the curb lanes in front of the businesses along Beverly to try to improve their access during this last phase of construction. And as far as the construction schedule going forward, by the 15th of October, all of the concrete will be poured and cured. And then over the 2 weeks following that, we will finish up laying the final cap of the asphalt over all of the intersection. And by the 29th of October, we will be doing the final striping and signing, which was our original schedule. So this project is scheduled to wrap up at the end of October. That's my presentation for this particular item. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Councilman Oro?
I'm concerned about the recycled water line that would go north on Rosemead. Has that been taken into consideration? Is that coming back? Because if I'm not mistaken, there's a recycled water line that travels on Beverly. We need to move that north.
Yeah, so that's a good question that I've been recently investigating, because I got a briefing on our Rosemead project, and one of the issues in the Rosemead project was to try to add a reclaimed water line. As I looked at that issue, I realized that the existing reclaimed water line is in Beverly. And in order to get reclaimed water up Rosemead, we would have to tear up this intersection to access that reclaimed water line, which I think it's safe to say is pretty undesirable. Also, I looked at and this is a discussion I wanted to bring up when we award Rosemead in October. However, I'd be happy to address this a bit now. I've been doing investigations as to the reclaimed water line north on Rosemead, and it's quite an expensive, even if we could get into Beverly before this construction ends, which frankly we cannot. It would be a very expensive reclaimed water line, and like any water line, you need users to pay for it. And the reclaimed water going up Rosemead could serve the medians along Rosemead, which we hope to at some point improve those medians, probably with drought-tolerant landscaping and some xeriscape measures. So there would be a user in the medians, but it's not a large user. And outside of that, there's not many users to the north on Rosemead. So it ends up being and you have to loop the reclaimed water line. So we would have to loop it to the east and come all the way back down to create a loop. And so it'd be, my evaluation so far is that it would be a several $1 million water line for a very limited use. That coupled with the fact that the water line that we would have to get to is in Beverly, and I don't think anyone wants to tear up this intersection. I think at this point, and my plan was to come back when we award Rosemead and recommend that the reclaimed water line not be installed for these variety of really obstacles, if you will.
So I brought in the director of Central Basin, who governs the recycled water lines. And he said that he was trying to work out something whereby they would pick up the cost, as long as the city agreed to purchase so many acre feet of water into the future. He said that there was grants and whatnot. That was several months ago. I've tried to follow up. As you know, we've had a change in the Public Works Director. I'm really disappointed. I'm upset, to be honest with you. Because in this city, we talk about planning. We have great presentations about how when we're going to redo roads, we're going to take into consideration fiber optic. We're going to take into consideration our pipes. And we didn't do that here. In fact, I tried to do that. That's why I stopped the Rosemead project, and I heard grief about it by a resident, because we were going to solve his problem. And then I try to bring a solution, and I get what you're telling me, Mr. Rodriguez. I'm not upset at you. I'm just upset that this wasn't planned right in the very beginning.
Councilman Camacho? Thank you.
Great. I also have some good news regarding our Smith Park swimming pool. The senator has secured $1 million for the Phase 1 repair of our pool at Smith Park. Once the governor signs the budget, the money will be released to the city of Pico Rivera. At this time, I wanted to thank our senator and his staff for their tireless effort to secure these funds. I also want to thank Governor Newsom for allocating these funds to our community. So I know we may have an update pretty soon on the analysis that we're doing, and then we can piece the puzzle together and hopefully get this up and running by next summer. So just want to report that out. And that concludes my reports.
Sir, you have
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. We also have a Commander to come and give a presentation. I apologize. I didn't see you in the audience, Commander.
City Manager, in all fairness, I would also like to request at a future meeting, we perhaps have the commanders of the American Legions come and visit us as well.
Sure, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you.
Just to let you all know, yes, I am the commander of the Veterans of Foreign Wars post, but I'm not here speaking as a VFW member or commander. I'm here speaking on behalf of all veterans. So I just want to make that clear, that commander is a title just used for identification purposes only. So I just want to start with that. First, I'd like to let you know that we have been approved for a Veterans Resource Center in our county library on Mines. I'd like to thank Mayor Elias for his tremendous help with this accomplishment. Together, we visited nearby resource centers, and we got a feel for what we can do and what not to do. Our Veterans Resource Center will be a one-stop shop for veterans services. Here, our veterans can apply for disability claims and get compensated for injuries and ailments acquired during their time in service. We will also be a resource of books and material relating to military and veterans affairs. The state of California has many resources for these centers available online at Veterans Connect at the library. More than just recognizing our war dead, this resource center will focus on our living veterans. Less than 11% of our veterans even use VA services. And when asked, they say they weren't aware of the programs. This center will not only take care of our city's veteran population, but will reach out to the more than 6,000 in the local area. With some effort, I believe we can have an opening this Veterans Day. For those who don't know when that is, it's November 11th. Instead of car shows and ceremonies, perhaps we can offer aid and assistance to veterans who need it, Instead of a handout, we can offer a hand up. We can help put federal dollars in the pockets of our veteran population, which will be spent in our local businesses, and in return, bring more tax revenue to our city. Win-win all the way around, I think. Another item I'd like to report on is our Veterans Advisory Committee. We've brought back this committee that had been dormant for many years. Perhaps someday it will become an actual commission, and it is with great hope that city staff will use this committee when planning future events. Our advisory committee has met a couple times already, and I thank you council members who have worked with me to get this advisory off the ground. I'd also like to announce that we currently have a survey out to get information from the veterans community. It's been published in the profile and placed on the city's electronic signage. I haven't seen it on social media yet. I guess there are more important items to promote, but I hear it's coming. Results are coming in, and we're working with city staff to get the data. And I want to let you know, the survey data is not going to the veteran organizations, but rather staying with the city. I recall a concern at a previous council meeting regarding this, so I wanted to clear that up. On Memorial Day, I mentioned to each of you the sad state of the service branch flags at the memorial site. To this day, I haven't seen them replaced, even though Mr. Camacho brought it to staff's attention at the meeting in June. Can I get an assurance that they will be replaced by Veterans Day? Now, speaking as a representative of a veteran service organization, I want you to know that with COVID closures and restrictions, we have been losing more than $5,000 monthly. As you consider grants to restaurants, please consider the nonprofit organizations of the VFW and American Legion Post in the community. So let me leave you with this. I just want to let you know, for some of us, every day is Veterans Day. And for some of us, every day is Memorial Day. Okay, thank you for your time, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Council.
Actually, I do have some questions, and thank you, Commander. I'm sorry, I was going to call you Dan. I've known you such a long time. I think I've known you longer than everybody here.
Just call me Dan.
But nevertheless, thank you for the position. I just, working to advocate for veterans, always top priority, and I think everybody's top priority here because we're a veteran community. And getting to the fact of having a resource center, that's great that the library has provided that. Can you elaborate as it relates to, when you say you got approvals, it's from the Library Commission, the County Board of Supervisors, and how much space was allocated at the library?
Mr. Mayor, do you want to take that?
Well, we had a chance to survey it, and that library has a lot of room, okay? And it's probably the most modern library around the area. So when we walked in, we saw that there was actual closed space there that had furniture stacked up. And when we talked to the librarian and said, could we use that? He said, oh, of course, okay? So we have a situation where we're not only going to have the panels and, the books and everything else, that we're going to be able to counsel on a private basis the veterans. And again, this is something that we haven't seen in any of the existing resource centers. We are going to have the best resource center in Southern California.
And I asked a question on the location, on the space, and that's good that you talked to the librarian, and she designated that one area. I've had many conversations with the county as it relates to the library itself and its operation, as it relates to, how much the county of Los Angeles pays for, how much they want us to pay for. So it's been an issue of operation, scheduling, hours. So hence my question as to, the final approvals, which sounds like we still need to get some official final approvals from.
I believe it's been approved by Supervisor Solis.
And that's what I'm asking, what levels, which is great. Want to make sure that at the end of the day, it's concrete, it's done, it's consistent, right? Because it's not a one-time shot, And then on that, as it relates to, I'm sure there's a plentitude of services. You mentioned some of them. Staffing, how are we going to staff this?
Specifically, we're talking about volunteers, but we want to have a county veteran service officer at least one day a week to do the formal claims. And by formal claims, I'm talking about disability claims, in which we're discussing having the privacy to discuss these items. You know, other libraries, veteran resource centers we've been to in the area, it's out in the open. So if you're going to be talking with somebody, the people reading a book next to you are going to hear all your private, personal health information. That's what we're trying to avoid. We want privacy for these issues.
So right now, it would be started off with volunteer-driven support. And then hopefully there's funding available to staff that individual that you mentioned.
I've been assured by the county's Department of Military and Veterans Affairs that there is funding available. And if not, it's not an issue to go to the Board of Supervisors and request more.
Good, good. And so that's good. And I think that's where we want to make sure as we move forward, we again, it's not a one-time shot, it's sustainable. When you're gone, we're gone. This resource center continues and being. Now, the services that we're going to provide, how does it differ from what our current congressional members provide support? I know I worked a lot with Congresswoman Napolitano and now Congresswoman Lisa Sanchez. But every veteran issue that I've come that has to do with just any, from your health, your insurance, I addressed it to them. They put a case worker on it, and it's been, so how does that differ?
It's going to alleviate the caseload management on all levels of government. Yeah, you can go to the VA directly and file your disability claim, but you're going to be waiting for hours before you even talk to a person. Or you can go to the state Veterans Affairs office, and again, you're going to be waiting hours. You can go to a local veteran service organization, and again, you're going to be waiting for hours. There's such a backlog, and we're trying to alleviate that, and that's what this will do.
And that's why we created that caseworker we put over at the senior center that was able to assist the seniors from a variety of different services and becomes a facilitator. So having a Veterans Resource Center with the proper services available to them when needed, I think will be essential. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Do we still have that caseworker available? That caseworker is still available?
Yes, he's still there.
And he's at the senior center?
Yes, he's at the senior center.
Thank you.
Councilman?
Mayor and Commander, I'd like to thank both of you for championing this and actually executing and receiving the financing from Supervisor Solis. So now veterans don't have to go to Long Beach to handle a private matter. They can go into a private office here in our local library and talk to a counselor in private, or they could possibly access a little computer in a cubicle and download and print out documents. Or if they actually want to get brochures, they can definitely get them from the shelving that's going to have all those items on display. So rather than going to Long Beach or Westwood, they just go down the street and they go to Mines and Rosemead and handle their matters of Veterans Affairs on a specific appointment. I think that's great. You know, we have a large percentage of veterans in our community, and now looks like we actually have done something concrete for them. Thank you.
Thank you for seeing our vision.
Councilman Lara?
I want to congratulate you, Commander. You were the brainchild behind this. I remember speaking to you about this many times, and you knew exactly where everything was and how to go about doing it. Mayor Elias, you were the council member here on the City Council that made sure that this happened. I want to congratulate you also. So please let us know how we can help. I think obviously we need to publicize it once it's up and going on our social media accounts to make sure that the public knows that this resource is available for our veterans. Thank you. Just one last thing. I'm happy to be part of this council in this sense, well, in every sense, but especially in this sense. When I ran for city council, there was a forum, a discussion forum at the VFW, and we all attended. And the question was asked about the resource center. And I said, yes, I support a resource center. I'm happy to say that now that is becoming a reality. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, Mayor? I wanted to reassure you, we do support the veterans. The veterans organizations were the first to receive the $10,000 mini grants from our community development block grant funds last year. And in addition, we still have additional funds from that. And at our last meeting, we discussed possibly opening up that funds for another round of funding to the veterans organization. So we did put veterans first before even the businesses during the time of COVID. So we did understand your situation. My second question is, my question is, how many members are in your VFW from Pico Rivera residents? About how many can you say?
I'd have to look at my roster. Easily over 50% of my membership, and that equates to about 300 members of the VFW with a couple hundred in our auxiliary.
And what do they usually traditionally come for when they come to the VFW? Do they have these issues with their medical records, or what is the average?
The Veterans of Foreign Wars cannot aid in disability claims at the post level. There was a lawsuit brought against us many years ago, and it was decided that we can't do that. So we have our service offices set up at the VA regional offices, and our nearest one is West Los Angeles. And they're at the federal building, and with COVID restrictions, they've been shut down. So we're not getting people coming in. Normally, we get people coming to our doors asking for assistance, and we have to refer them somewhere else.
Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for your service. And, we look to you as a partner. So if you see any grants, any funding opportunities for us to buy flags, definitely we can look to expedite that. And anything you see out there, we support that. So
Thank you.
I just wanted to,
Mayor, if I may,
Go
I
ahead.
apologize, I just want to reiterate that we need to get some flags up there before Veterans Day. Please.
Yes, it's in the process.
can I ask you what the disposition is of the VFW on Durfee? What's,
Well, that post, I'm no longer the district commander, so I really don't have much to say on that issue. But they have reelected officers. We're talking about merging that post with possibly our post to keep it in Pico. There was also an item of merging that post with the South Amani post, which I don't think will benefit our city any. So it looks like it's coming back. If we're talking about the property, that may be up for sale in the future. But right now, since it's in the middle of a construction zone, it's not worth anything. But once that construction's done, I believe we're going to have an optimal site.
and we are working very closely with the American Legion, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Yes. Okay. I want to thank you. You're persistent, okay? We have been driving to libraries, and so it's been incredible, but thank you very much for your persistence. I might add, I received a call from Supervisor Solis's staff member letting us know that we were authorized to do it, and I asked, is it possible that we can, make the announcement on Veterans Day? And she said, we'll probably be in operations by Veterans Day. So I'm hoping that that comes through, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, just one last announcement. The city of Pico Rivera will be hosting a job fair in partnership with Rio Hondo's American Job Center, SASFA, and the Pico Rivera Chamber of Commerce. That will be September 23rd from 1 to 4 p.m. at Pico Park, and we'll be pushing that out on social media platforms.
Okay. Through with reports?
That is all.
Yes. New business, I will go around the dais. Mayor Pro Tem. Councilman Lara.
Yeah, I'd like to present an item that hopefully I could get a second on to direct staff to work this up further. As we know that winter is coming and the possibility of booster shots for COVID is becoming more of a reality, I'd like to work with staff in establishing a COVID flu vaccine clinic and COVID testing clinic in conjunction with Pico Care Pharmacy. The subpoint to that is providing a financial incentive for our residents to get their booster shot. I'd like to work up that plan with staff and bring it back to City Council if I get a second. Thank you. That's it.
We have a second? Okay. Vote? All in favor? No? We don't need to. Okay, thank you. Good job. Councilman Lutz?
Councilmember Laura, I wanted to also add, CVS Pharmacy is doing a clinic. If you could get in contact with them, they're looking to do a clinic in the future. So if you can get that promoted in conjunction.
Thank you. I'll look into that.
Mayor, no new business.
No new business. Okay. I have some new business here. Council, I need some clarification on this one. We have discussed term limits being placed on the ballot. Do we need a resolution for it to be put on the ballot?
Yes, Mayor and members of the council, you will ultimately need resolutions adopted, but it's way too early to bring those to the council. That will be brought forward next year during the next election cycle process.
Okay, so what time do we want to look at?
I think that would be, because it would go on the November ballot of next year of 2022, so that would be in probably July.
Okay. Mr. City Manager, could we have a follow-up to the regional librarian that we requested the space for?
Yes, Mayor. We'll definitely follow up with that.
Thank you. Let's see. Now, we've talked about the outreach program that we're trying to develop for the establishing priorities for the COVID funds. Are we scheduling any town halls, or are we just restricting it to the survey?
Yeah, we're going to get some guidance from the survey on certain issues, but we're also having a study session with council at the end of September. If after meeting with council, they direct us to meet with the community, we're prepared to do that as well.
I think it's going to be I feel it's very important that we get the residents to speak up on this. And again, it is important that we hold these town halls, so then again, they can see faces and we can hear voices. And I would suggest that we have a town hall for residents, businesses separately, senior citizens, veterans, and youth to voice their priorities for the assistance of the COVID funds. Okay, and now we asked for we actually agendized this last meeting, and that was the presentation by the new staffer in the introduction of the new contract and procurement proposed policies. Where does that stand?
The policy is being reviewed internally by staff, and we will present it to the city attorney so he can weigh in. Afterwards, we will present it to city council for review and approval.
So again, when are we going to have that?
We can have it first or second meeting in October.
First or second?
Yeah, depending on the review, we're going to send it over to city attorney for final review, making any edits. So it could happen as early as the first meeting in October. If they don't get through it, then we'll schedule it for the second meeting in October.
Okay. Now, did we give up on the state of the city?
No, sir. In fact, we've been trying to schedule with, I believe, Sandra, with individual council members. There was a change that you requested to include the members, so we're trying to get that coordinated.
Can we talk about it right now so then everyone knows what?
Yeah, you may have some emails. Again, I'll check with Sandra just to see who's scheduled those meetings.
So we need time from each one of you so then we can record your statements on the state of the, okay? So are we going to be able to follow up on the people so then they can?
Yes, we'll follow up.
Okay. All right. Oh, that's it for me. Old business. Nothing?
No.
Councilman?
There was an item regarding changing the, I'm using the wrong word, policy on fireworks, moving it from, I think, the 30th to the 28th, or from the 1st to the 28th.
That's correct.
I'd like to bring that back to the next city council meeting for a discussion and hopefully a vote. I was out at Smith Park and talking to some of the user groups, and that's something they still would very much like to pursue. That's, I think, about it.
Councilman?
No,
I have an update. Director Garcia and I had a conference call with the Director of Tobacco Control Program for LA County, and we're working on proposals for policy related to banning flavored tobacco products, other comprehensive policies like a tobacco retail license, which would help us to pay, for instance, for a sheriff to help enforce these policies. And so there's a number of things that the staff will be working on. They have a lot of sample model ordinances from other local cities like El Monte, Baldwin Park, Montebello, other local cities. And so the staff are reviewing this and working. Hopefully in the future we can bring it for discussion. And it relates to the Safety Committee, as well as the Health Committee, as well as the Business Committee. It relates to all of us. So it'll be a great discussion. I think good information to have.
Councilman Lutz?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for bringing that up, because that is a valid point. And if that could be incorporated in future ordinances, that would be valuable to our youth and the future of the city. My old business, I recently, over the last 24 hours, I went to go visit some of the railways out in our city that the Southern Pacific Railroad did outreach to the homeless encampments, assisting them with any housing or job opportunities that they might want to take advantage of. And Director Michael Garcia and I went out there, and if he wants to add a little bit.
Thank you, Councilmember. The Union Pacific Railroad Company is working on 3 different cleanups over the next 3 weeks. The first one that's occurring is close to our city yard at the bridge over the San Gabriel River. And I really want to thank Deputy Ben. Deputy Ben's been working on this. We've been able to get a lot of traction through Deputy Ben with not only Union Pacific, but with BNSF. And a lot of those corridor improvements are occurring from that relationship with Antonio Paz from Union Pacific. And I want to thank Councilmember Camacho, who brought this up as an important point for our Economic Development Ad Hoc Committee, that trying to clean up these corridor areas. And even something like this that's not visible is something that for Metrolink riders, they do see that. They see the Pico Viejo graffiti, they see the encampments underneath that bridge. And we actually, unfortunately, we're having some criminal activity. And so we're glad that that first cleanup is occurring very close to our city yard. And appropriately, some folks were camped out within, the unhoused were living within the San Gabriel River, which can be dangerous if rains begin in the coming season, and they're still within that area. So thank you, Councilmember Lutz, for joining us last Thursday out at that, to visit that portion underneath the bridge.
Yes, and as Director Garcia mentioned, it was this action that was taking place over the last 24 hours was twofold. It was to help those homeless or the unhoused with alternate housing and assistance, and also to clean up the area because it becomes a blight. It becomes an eyesore, and then criminal activity begins to fester thereafter. So very happy that action was taken care of as quickly as it was.
Councilman?
And I just wanted to follow up to the statement that was made. It's, again, we commend all the work of our men and women from the Sheriff Department doing a great job. But I just want to re-echo what Director Garcia mentioned as far as Deputy Ben. He made a presentation about the homeless the day he was here, but just his approach in dealing with such a complex issue. And in addition to that, dealing with the business community and resident issues, I just wanted to commend him. You're awesome. You're doing a great job, and your team. Thank you.
I'm through with old business. Intergovernment agency meetings. Did anyone attend the meeting? Mayor Pro Tem? Councilman?
I don't have any report.
I had a meeting with the El Rancho Unified School District Health Committee. We talked about their invaluable work that they've done throughout the past several months regarding their COVID clinics in conjunction with Pico Care Pharmacy. We talked about writing, potentially, if the mayor would approve, writing a joint letter to the LA County Public Health, talking about the need for school districts or our school district, El Rancho Unified School District, to always be part of the discussion of public health when it comes to the community. And I think that was because they didn't have a seat at that table with the initial discussions about our city becoming an MPOD for distributing either vaccines or medication in an emergency situation. They need to be part of that discussion because as we learned at the beginning of the outset of vaccine distribution, vaccine was limited, but also staff to give that vaccine. The school district has staff already. They have multiple nurses. So they should have been part of that discussion because we could have then just asked the county, we just need vaccine. We could run the clinic ourselves in conjunction with the school district. So we want to write to them and say they need to be included in the model going forward. And we talked about working together going forward on putting together COVID clinics. In fact, tonight, that was the beginning of receiving a second for this idea on moving forward. They like the idea about providing a financial incentive for our seniors or those of 50 and over. I'm not calling them 50-year-old seniors, but 50 years of age and older because that is the most vulnerable population, and we should start thinking about getting them booster shots. It was a very productive meeting. Just in closing, the school district was very thankful for the security provided by the sheriff's department at their football game. That was very well done. Thank you. They did ask that their football games be played on our cable network Sunday morning, and also banners on passants. They wanted to put up a number of banners of their graduates on passants. It would cost us nothing. They already have a company to do it. They just need our permission. So I just want to throw that out there and kind of hopefully we can follow through with that and allow them to do that.
Are we going to be able to do anything with the testing requirements for our athletes, our city program?
That we talked about that also. And I talked with Pico Care Pharmacy, and LA County changed the guidelines. They require those who are 12 and older who are unvaccinated to get tested every week in order to play in their youth sports, whether it be RBA or their Dons. Hopefully, we'll be able to provide a plan with Pico Care Pharmacy to provide testing to either supplement or provide it for free for those residents whose child is not vaccinated but they want to play. I don't think that they should be saddled with the financial burden of having to get tested every week. The LA County did provide the caveat, though, that if they're tested at school, that suffices. So that might work for some. It may not work for others. I'm going to continue this discussion with Parks and Recs and then also business. I'd like to just say one last thing. I'm not going to say. I'm done. Thank you.
It's fantastic what you're doing. It's really needed. But, I want to just ask you about the pharmacy owner that's doing an extraordinary job in terms of testing and so on.
Yeah, so we met today and we talked over breakfast. He not only is he willing to help, but now he has a database of residents who have already had their shots or tested through him. And that's invaluable because so then if we do a booster clinic, you can go back and send those residents a postcard and say, we're due, come get your third shot, right? At the senior center. Because we have a small database of our seniors, about 500, but he has like 10,000, 10 to 15,000. So it improves our reach, and it just helps people become vaccinated. And then if we offer a small financial incentive, it's an idea I'd like to bring back at the next city council meeting. It just might stimulate people to protect themselves further.
Thank you. No. No meeting, Lieutenant? Okay, we are through with the intergovernmental agencies. Council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have 2 items for closed session listed as items A and B.
Oh, let's see, before we close here, we have to pay tribute. We're going to close in the memory of the World War II veteran Art Valenzuela. World War II veteran. Council?
Want to do some closed session?
Can you take us?
Mr. Mayor, yes, we do have those 2 items for closed session, items A and B, and we will be, when we do adjourn, it will be in memory of the mayor's comment. We go into closed session?